The morning sun cast long shadows across the cobblestone courtyard of Valenhill Castle as Tobias Hartwell hauled another bucket of water from the well. At 19, he had spent the last 15 years of his life tending to the royal horses, sleeping on hay bales and dreaming of adventures that seemed forever beyond his reach. His hands were calloused from years of hard work, his clothes patched and mended countless times, but his spirit remained unbroken despite the constant reminders from nobles that he was nothing more than a servant. "Hartwell, you missed a spot?" "On Thunder's saddle," sneered Lord Blackthorn as he inspected the stables, his polished boots clicking against the stone floor. The nobleman's dark eyes held a cruel gleam as he deliberately knocked over a bucket of fresh oats. "Clean it up properly this time, stable boy?" Tobias bit back his response, knowing that any defiance would only bring more trouble. Lord Blackthorn had made his life difficult ever since arriving at court 6 months ago, claiming to be a distant relative of the royal family. There was something unsettling about the man, something that made the horses nervous and the air feel colder whenever he was near. "Don't let him get under your skin," came a familiar voice. Lady Celeste approached with her usual confident stride, her auburn hair braided practically for her work with the royal falcons. At 18, she was the castle falconer's daughter and one of the few people who treated Tobias with genuine kindness. "Father says Blackthorn wasn't even invited to court. He just showed up one day with some old documents, claiming royal blood." Tobias managed to smile despite his frustration. "Thanks, Celeste. Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to be born into a different life." "You're worth 10 of him," she replied firmly. "Speaking of which, have you heard the news? A caravan arrived this morning with a girl claiming to be a foreign princess. The whole castle is buzzing about it." Before Tobias could respond, a commotion erupted in the main courtyard. Servants rushed past, their faces filled with excitement and curiosity. Through the stable doors, Tobias could see a crowd gathering around what appeared to be a travel-worn carriage decorated with symbols he didn't recognize. "Let's go see," Celeste suggested, grabbing his arm. They made their way through the crowd until they had a clear view of the carriage. The door opened, and out stepped the most beautiful girl Tobias had ever seen. She appeared to be about his age, with long silvery hair that seemed to shimmer in the sunlight and eyes the color of deep emeralds. Her dress, though dusty from travel, was clearly made of the finest materials, and she carried herself with a natural grace that spoke of noble birth. "I am Princess Seraphina of the Northern Realms," she announced to the gathered crowd, her voice clear and melodious. "I seek an audience with King Aldrich on a matter of great importance." King Aldrich himself appeared on the castle steps, flanked by his royal guards. The king was a fair ruler in his 50s, known for his wisdom and justice. "Welcome to Valenhall, Princess Seraphina. What brings you to our kingdom?" The princess's eyes swept across the crowd before she spoke. "Your Majesty, I bring warning of a great darkness that threatens all the kingdoms of men. Ancient enemies stir in the shadows, and only by uniting our forces can we hope to survive what is coming." As she spoke, Tobias felt a strange tingling sensation in his mind, as if something was trying to connect with his thoughts. He shook his head, thinking it was just the excitement of the moment, but the feeling persisted. "And what proof do you offer of this threat?" Lord Blackthorn interjected, stepping forward with a skeptical expression. As he moved closer to the princess, Tobias noticed that her face paled slightly, and her hand moved instinctively to what appeared to be a pendant hidden beneath her dress. "The proof will come soon enough," she replied, her voice steady despite the obvious discomfort Blackthorn's presence caused her. "But those who know how to look will see the signs. The old bonds are stirring, and the blood of ancient kings calls to its own." At those words, the tingling in Tobias's mind intensified, and for a moment he could have sworn he heard a voice speaking directly to his thoughts. It was deep and resonant, like distant thunder. At last, the dragon speaker awakens. Tobias looked around frantically, but no one else seemed to have heard anything. The crowd was still focused on the exchange between the princess and the king. "We shall discuss this matter further in private council," King Aldrich decided. "Princess Seraphina, you are welcome in our castle. Lord Chamberlain, please see that suitable quarters are prepared." As the crowd began to disperse, Tobias found himself unable to move. Princess Serafina was looking directly at him, and in her green eyes, he saw recognition and something else, hope. "You," she said, approaching him despite the protests of the royal guards. "What is your name?" "Tobias Hartwell, Your Highness," he managed to stammer, acutely aware of his humble appearance compared to her elegance. She smiled, and it was like the sun breaking through clouds. "It's an honor to meet you, Tobias Hartwell. I've a feeling our paths will cross again very soon." Before he could respond, she was whisked away by the royal escort, leaving him standing in the courtyard with his heart racing and his mind full of questions. "Well, that was interesting," Celeste commented, appearing at his side again. "She seemed quite taken with you." That afternoon, as Tobias went about his usual duties, he couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. The strange voice in his head had fallen silent, but he could still feel something different within himself, as if a door that had been locked his entire life was finally beginning to open. As evening approached, he was leading the horses back to their stalls when the first shadow passed overhead. At first he thought it was a large cloud, but the horses began to whinny and pull at their leads, their instincts screaming danger. Tobias looked up and felt his breath catch in his throat. The creature soaring above the castle was massive, easily the size of the entire stable complex, with scales that shifted from deep blue to silver as it moved through the air. Its wings created wind currents strong enough to bend the trees in the royal gardens. "Dragon," he whispered in awe and terror. More shadows joined the first. 3, then 5, then 7 magnificent dragons circled the castle, their wingspans blocking out the setting sun. The entire castle erupted into chaos as people ran for cover, but Tobias stood transfixed in the courtyard. With scales like polished copper, descended first. The ground shook as it landed, its massive clawed feet leaving deep impressions in the stone. When it turned its ancient eyes toward Tobias, that same voice from earlier spoke clearly in his mind. "Dragon speaker, we have been searching for you." Princess Serafina appeared at the castle entrance, no longer looking like a helpless foreign noble. There was something different about her now, an otherworldly quality that made the air around her shimmer. When she looked at Tobias, her eyes briefly flashed with an inner fire that reminded him of the dragons above. "The time of hiding is over," she called out to him across the courtyard. "Are you ready to discover who you truly are, Tobias Hartwell?" As if in response to her words, the copper dragon lowered its massive head until it was level with Tobias. Up close, he could see his own reflection in its pupil, but somehow he looked different, older, more regal, as if the dragon's gaze was showing him a version of himself he had never known existed. "I am Master Draconius," the dragon's voice resonated in his mind. "And you, young one, are the last of the dragon speakers, the blood of kings who once ruled alongside our kind. The darkness that Princess Serafina warned of is already here, and only you can help us stop it." Tobias felt the world tilt around him as everything he thought he knew about himself crumbled away. He wasn't just a stable boy, it was something more, something important enough that ancient dragons had sought him out. Looking between the magnificent dragon and the mysterious princess who watched him with such hope in her eyes, Tobias made a decision that would change everything. "I'm ready," he said, his voice stronger than he had ever heard it. "Tell me what I need to do." The copper dragon's approval washed over him like a warm breeze, and Princess Serafina smiled with genuine relief. Whatever was coming, whatever dangers lay ahead, Tobias knew his life as a simple stable boy was over. The real adventure was just beginning. The great hall of Valenhall Castle had never hosted such an extraordinary gathering. 7 magnificent dragons perched around the castle grounds while inside. King Aldrich sat at the head of a long oak table, flanked by his advisors, Princess Serafina, and surprisingly, Tobias Hartwell. The stable boy still wore his simple clothes, but something had changed in his bearing since the dragon's arrival. He sat straighter, his eyes held a new confidence, and when he spoke, even the king listened. "The dragons have shared their memories with me," Tobias explained, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was revealing. "For over 3,000 years, they have watched and waited for the dragon speaker bloodline to resurface. My ancestors weren't just kings, they were the bridge between human and dragon civilizations. Master Draconius's voice resonated in Tobias's mind, and he translated for the others. He says that my great ancestor, King Aurelius the Dragon-bonded, established a pact between our peoples. When dragons retreated from the world of men, they took with them the knowledge of an ancient enemy that exists beyond the boundaries of our realm. Princess Seraphina leaned forward, her green eyes intense. The Void Lords, she said quietly. Beings of pure darkness that consume magic itself. They've been testing the barriers between worlds, looking for a way to break through. Lord Blackthorn, who had been silent throughout most of the discussion, suddenly laughed coldly. Fairy tales and legends, dragons speaking to stable boys, void lords, ancient bloodlines. This is madness. As he spoke, the temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Princess Seraphine's hand moved to her pendant, and Tobias felt a warning pulse through his connection with Master Draconius. You seem quite eager to dismiss the threat, Lord Blackthorn, Seraphina observed, her voice carrying a subtle challenge. Blackthorn's eyes flashed with something that wasn't quite human. I simply prefer to deal in reality, not in children's stories about magic and monsters. Before anyone could respond, a tremendous roar echoed from outside the castle. The dragons were calling an alarm. Tobias jumped to his feet, his newly awakened senses screaming danger. Something's wrong, he announced, already moving toward the Great Hall's windows. The dragons sensed a disturbance in the magical fabric around the castle. Through the tall windows, they could see the sky darkening unnaturally, for moments. Before there had been clear blue heavens, now swirling clouds of absolute blackness gathered. Within those clouds, shapes moved that hurt to look at directly. Void spawn, Princess Seraphina breathed, and as she spoke, her appearance began to change. Her silvery hair took on an iridescent quality. Her skin seemed to glow with inner light, and her eyes blazed with dragonfire. They found a way through. King Aldrich stared in amazement. Princess, you're not entirely human, are you? Smiled sadly. I am Seraphina, daughter of the dragon, queen of the northern realms. Half dragon, half human, born of an ancient union between our peoples. I came here because the Void's influence was growing stronger, and I knew the dragon speaker would be needed. Tobias felt his heart skip a beat. The girl he was falling for was herself part dragon. Instead of fear or revulsion, he felt only wonder and a deeper connection to her. The Void creatures are descending, he reported, his enhanced senses picking up movement through his bond with the dragons. Master Draconius says we have perhaps minutes before they reach the castle. Lord Blackthorn stood abruptly. This is preposterous. I won't stay here listening to this nonsense. As he moved toward the door, shadows seemed to cling to him in ways that defied the torchlight. It stopped, Tobias commanded, and power rang in his voice. For the first time since awakening his abilities, he felt the full strength of his heritage flowing through him. You're not going anywhere, Void Servant. Blackthorn spun around, his human disguise finally dropping away. His skin became pale. As moonlight, his eyes turned black as the void between stars, and darkness radiated from him like heat from a forge. Clever boy, he hissed, his voice now layered with otherworldly harmonics. Yes, I am the advanced scout, the one who opened the way for my masters. And soon, all the magic in this realm will feed the eternal hunger of the void. The battle erupted instantly. Blackthorn unleashed tendrils of pure darkness that lashed out at everyone in the room. King Aldrich's guards raised their shields, but the void energy passed through steel and leather as if they were paper. Princess Seraphina stepped forward, her transformation completing as dragon scales appeared along her arms and neck, and her hands became clawed. She breathed a stream of silver fire that met Blackthorn's darkness head-on, the two forces clashing in spectacular displays of light and shadow. Tobias felt power building within him, the ancient knowledge of his bloodline awakening fully. Reached out with his mind to Master Draconius and the other dragons surrounding the castle. Lend me your strength, he called to them through their bond. Let me channel the fire of all 7 dragons. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Dragon fire from 7 ancient beings flowed through Tobias, filling him with more power than any human had wielded in 3 millennia. His body began to glow with the same inner light as Seraphim's, and when he raised his hands, flames of every color danced around his fingers. "You cannot stand against the void," Blackthorn snarled, pouring more darkness into his attack. "Light have consumed entire galaxies, devoured the magic of 1,000 worlds. But you've never faced the united power of dragons and their chosen speaker," Tobias replied, his voice now carrying the harmonic resonance of dragon speech. He combined his channeled dragon fire with Seraphim's natural flames, and together, they created a torrent of magical energy that burned away Blackthorn's darkness. The Void Servant's scream shattered every piece of glass in the great hall before his form dissolved into nothing. As Blackthorn's destruction broke the connection he had established, the unnatural clouds outside began to dissipate. The Void Spawn, cut off from their anchor in this realm, were pulled back into the darkness between worlds. In the sudden silence that followed, Tobias and Seraphina found themselves standing close together, both still glowing with residual dragon fire. Their eyes met, and in that moment, the attraction that had been building between them since her arrival crystallized into something deeper. "That was incredible," she said softly, her hand finding his. "I've never seen anyone channel dragon fire like that. I've never felt anything like it," he admitted, acutely aware of how her touch sent warmth through his entire being. "Our powers combined, it was like we were meant to work together." King Aldrich cleared his throat, reminding them they weren't alone. "So it seems we have our dragon speaker and our dragon princess. The question now is what comes next, Master?" Draconius's voice filled Tobias's mind with urgent information. "The dragons say this was just a probing attack. The real invasion will come soon, and when it does, the Void Lords themselves will cross over. They're gathering their forces in the space between dimensions." Seraphina nodded grimly. "My mother sent me here not just to find the dragon speaker, but to forge an alliance. The northern dragon realms are already under attack. We need to unite all the kingdoms of men with all the dragon clans if we're going to survive. Then we'll do whatever it takes," Tobias declared, surprising himself with his newfound determination. 3 days ago, he had been cleaning horse stalls. Now he was planning to save the world alongside the most remarkable girl he had ever met. As if reading his thoughts, Seraphina squeezed his hand gently. "Are you ready for this, Tobias? Once we begin this path, there's no going back. To your old life." He looked into her eyes, seeing not just the dragon fire that burned within her, but also the hope, the courage, and something else that made his heart race. "With you beside me, I'm ready for anything," he said, meaning every word. Outside, the 7 dragons roared in unison, their voices carrying across the kingdom and beyond, calling all their scattered kin to war. The final battle between light and void was about to begin, and at its center would be a stable boy who had discovered his royal heritage and a dragon princess who had found her perfect match. The real test of their love and their power was yet to come. 3 weeks had passed since Lord Blackthorn's defeat, and the kingdom of Valenhall had transformed into a fortress of light and fire. Dragons from across the realm had answered Master Draconius's call, their magnificent forms perched on every tower and battlement. The castle courtyard had become a training ground where Tobias worked tirelessly to master his growing powers under the guidance of both the ancient dragons and Princess Seraphina. The bond between Tobias and Seraphina had deepened with each passing day. They sparred together, practiced combining their magical abilities, and spent long evenings walking the castle gardens, sharing stories of their vastly different childhoods. Despite their different worlds, they found themselves perfectly matched. In both power and spirit, your control is improving, Seraphina observed as they concluded their morning training session. Tobias had just successfully channeled dragonfire through 7 different dragons simultaneously, creating a defensive barrier around the entire castle. But you're still holding back. Why? Tobias lowered his hands, the magical flames dissipating. "I'm afraid," he admitted, "these powers, this responsibility, sometimes I feel like I'm going to lose myself in it all. What if I'm not strong enough when the real battle comes?" Serafina stepped closer, her hand reaching up to touch his cheek. In the weeks since revealing her true nature, she had grown more comfortable showing her dragon heritage. Her eyes held flecks of gold that danced like flames, and her touch carried the warmth of dragon fire. "You're not alone in this," she said, softly. "We're stronger together than either of us could be apart. That's what love means, isn't it? Sharing strength when the other falters?" Before Tobias could respond, the very air around them began to vibrate with wrongness. The dragons, perched throughout the castle, raised their heads in alarm, and Master Draconius's voice boomed urgently in Tobias's mind. "They come," the ancient dragon announced. "The Void Lords have gathered enough power to tear open a permanent gateway. This is the final assault." The sky above Valenhall Castle began to split like torn fabric. Through the growing rift they could see the space between dimensions, a realm of absolute darkness, where shapes moved that defied description. The Void Lords were coming through, beings of pure anti-magic whose very presence began to drain color and warmth from the world. "All our preparations lead to this moment," King Aldrich declared as he joined them in the courtyard, wearing his finest armor and carrying the ancient sword of his lineage. "Whatever happens, it has been an honor to stand beside the Dragon Speaker and the Dragon Princess." The first Void Lord emerged from the rift, and its appearance sent waves of despair radiating outward. It stood 30 feet tall, composed of shifting darkness that seemed to absorb light itself. Where it stepped, the very stones of the castle began to crack and crumble. "Mortals," it spoke, its voice like the sound of dying stars, "you have cost us much with your resistance. But now we shall feed upon your realm until nothing remains but darkness and silence." More Void Lords poured through the gateway, their forms causing reality itself to waver. The dragons launched themselves into battle, breathing fire and light against the invading darkness. But for every inch they gained, the Void forces pushed back twice as hard. "The gateway must be closed," Serafina shouted over the sounds of battle. "But it requires a sacrifice of immense magical power, more than any single being possesses." Tobias felt the weight of destiny settling on his shoulders. He understood what needed to be done, but the cost would be everything he had gained, everything he had discovered about himself. "Not a single being," he said, looking into Seraphine's eyes with love and determination, "but two, joined as one." She understood immediately. The dragon bonding ritual, spoken of in the oldest legends, but never attempted between a dragon speaker and a dragon princess. It would unite their very souls, creating a power greater than the sum of their parts. But it would also bind them together for all eternity. "If we do this, there's no going back," Serafina warned, even as she began to glow with inner fire. "We'll be linked forever in this life, and whatever comes after." "I can't think of anything I want more," Tobias replied, taking her hands in his. They began the ritual as the battle raged around them. Ancient words in the dragon tongue flowed from their lips, words that had been spoken only a handful of times in all of history. As they chanted, their individual auras began to merge, silver fire intertwining with golden flame. The Void Lords sensed what was happening and turned their full attention toward the pair. Tendrils of pure darkness lashed out, seeking to interrupt the bonding process, but the dragons of Valenhall formed a protective circle around them, sacrificing themselves to hold back the assault. "The bond is taking hold," Master Draconius announced, his ancient voice filled with wonder even as he battled 3 Void Lords simultaneously. "I can feel their souls joining. The power they're generating is beyond anything in recorded history." Tobias and Serafina rose into the air, supported by wings of pure energy that had sprouted from their joined aura. They were no longer quite human or quite dragon, but something new, something that had never existed before. Their combined consciousness expanded, encompassing not just their own power, but the strength of every dragon in the realm and the hopes of every human who looked to them for salvation. "We are one," they spoke in unison, their voices harmonizing in ways that made the very air sing. "And as one, we reject the Void's claim on this realm." They raised their joined hands toward the dimensional rift, and from their combined will came a torrent of creative force that was the opposite of the Void's hunger. Where the Void Lords brought destruction and ending, Tobias and Seraphina brought renewal and beginning. Their power didn't just close the gateway, it began to heal the damage the Void had inflicted on reality itself. The Void Lords shrieked, in fury and pain, as the creative energy washed over them. Their forms, designed to consume and destroy, couldn't withstand the pure force of creation and love. One by one, they dissolved, pulled back through the closing rift to the dark realm between dimensions. This is not possible. The largest Void Lord raged as it was dragged toward the shrinking gateway. Love is weakness. Creation is chaos. Order comes only through the void. Then you understand nothing, Seraphina replied, her voice carrying the wisdom of dragons and the compassion of humanity. Love isn't weakness. It's the force that binds the universe together. And creation isn't. Chaos, Tobias added. His consciousness expanded beyond anything he had imagined possible. It's the greatest magic of all, the power to make something from nothing, to bring light where there was only darkness. With a final surge of their combined will, they sealed the dimensional rift permanently, weaving barriers of love and hope. That would prevent the void from ever touching their realm again. As the last of the darkness faded, they descended gently to the castle courtyard, still glowing with the residual power of their bonding. King Aldrich approached them with tears in his eyes. You've saved us all, the kingdom, the realm, perhaps. Existence itself. Couldn't have done it alone, Tobias said, his arm around Seraphine's waist. Even though the immediate danger had passed, he could still feel her consciousness intertwined with his, a warmth and presence that he knew would be with him always. Dragons will remember this day, Master, Draconius declared, his massive head bowed in respect. The day when love proved stronger than the void, when creation conquered destruction. You have not just saved our realm, you have shown us a new way forward. The weeks that followed brought celebration and rebuilding. Tobias and Seraphina found themselves at the center of a new age. The barriers between human and dragon civilization had fallen, replaced by cooperation and mutual respect. Tobias, no longer a stable boy, but recognized as the true heir to the ancient dragon speaker throne, worked alongside King Aldrich to establish new laws and customs that honored both peoples. But more than the political changes, it was the personal transformation that mattered most. On a warm spring evening, as they stood together on the castle's highest tower watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Seraphina turned to face the man who had become her eternal partner. Do you ever regret it? She asked softly. Giving up your simple life for all this responsibility? Tobias pulled her closer, marveling as he always did at how perfectly she fit in his arms. How could I regret finding you, finding love? Out who I really am? He paused, looking out over the kingdom they had saved together. Besides, I never really had a simple life. I just hadn't discovered my complicated one yet, she laughed, the sound like silver bells in the evening air. Well, when you put it that way, I suppose we're both exactly where we belong. The first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Tobias and Seraphina stood together, their souls bonded for eternity, their love having literally saved the world. Around them, dragons and humans worked side by side, building a future that neither species could have achieved alone. The stable boy who had become a dragon speaker and the dragon princess who had found her perfect match had proven that some fairy tales do come true. In the growing darkness of night, their combined light shone as a beacon of hope for all who saw it. A reminder that love indeed conquers all.